A young boy was kicked out of a boutique store, unaware his dad is a billionaire. 24 hours later, he arrived in 2 SUVs. It was a warm Tuesday afternoon in Texas when Noah walked into a high-end boutique store, unaware of what was about to unfold. The sun hung lazily in the sky, casting a golden glow over the streets, as if the world outside was moving in slow motion. Inside the boutique, the air was cool, crisp, and filled with the scent of polished wood and expensive perfume. Before we go further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this one. Enjoy the story. The walls were lined with elegant displays of clothing, dresses that shimmered with opulence, suits that seemed to whisper sophistication, and shoes that gleamed like treasures. Noah, a 12-year-old boy in well-worn jeans and sneakers that had seen better days, stepped into the boutique with wide eyes. He didn't belong here, not in the way the other customers did. His clothes, faded and mismatched, were a far cry from the designer outfits surrounding him. But for a moment, none of that mattered. He wasn't there to buy anything. He was simply there to marvel at the beauty of the items on display. As he wandered deeper into the store, his fingers brushed against a soft, velvet jacket. He couldn't help but admire the feel of the fabric, the way it shimmered under the soft lighting. The richness of it all made him feel like he was in another world, one where dreams could come true if only he could afford it. His heart raced as he took it all in. This was a side of life he had only ever seen in movies. But as Noah lost himself in the allure of the store, a sharp glance from one of the employees snapped him back to reality. The woman, a tall and polished figure, had noticed him immediately. Her gaze flickered over him, taking in the scuffed sneakers and the faded jeans, and a subtle shift in her demeanor suggested that Noah wasn't exactly what she expected to see in her boutique. The murmur of whispered conversations from behind the counters began to rise, almost like a low hum. Noah was used to being overlooked, but there was something different about the way they were looking at him now. It wasn't just indifference. It was a quiet judgment, something colder and more cutting. A moment later, the store manager approached him with a forced smile. Her black hair was perfectly styled, her high heels clicking against the polished floor as she moved toward him with an air of efficiency. "Can I help you, young man?" she asked, her voice smooth but distant, as if she was already sizing him up. Noah froze, caught off guard. He didn't expect anyone to speak to him, let alone someone who looked so out of place in his world. I was just looking," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Her smile tightened ever so slightly as she glanced him over. She didn't even have to ask the question. Her eyes already told him what she was thinking. His clothes, his shoes, the slight awkwardness in his posture, it was clear to her that Noah was not the kind of customer the boutique catered to. "This store," she began, her voice a little colder now, "is for customers who can afford the luxury we offer here. If you're not here to buy anything, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The words stung more than Noah could have imagined. It wasn't the first time someone had looked at him like he didn't belong, but something about the way she said it, so matter-of-factly, so dismissive, pierced through him. He opened his mouth to say something, but the words caught in his throat. There was no point. She was already signaling to another employee, who began to walk toward him. Noah's heart sank as he felt the eyes of the boutique staff on him, their gazes no longer curious, but judging. With no other option, he turned and walked towards the door, every step heavy with the weight of rejection. The bell above the door rang softly as he exited, the sound a faint echo in his ears. Outside, the Texas sun felt unbearably hot as Noah stepped onto the street, his cheeks flushed with the sting of humiliation. He didn't cry, didn't let out a single sob. Instead, he kept his head low, staring at the ground as he walked away. The world inside the boutique was one he would never fit into, he thought. It was a world where people like him, people without money, without status, were invisible. And as he made his way down the sidewalk, he couldn't help but feel like that was all he'd ever be, just another invisible face in a world that didn't care. Underscore 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 underscore. Noah got back home and was feeling very sad after getting kicked out of the boutique. The weight of the rejection hung over him like a heavy cloud, and he couldn't shake the sting of the words the store manager had said. "This store is for customers who can afford the luxury we offer here." He replayed them in his head, over and over, the tone of condescension still ringing in his ears. He had hoped to simply dream a little, to imagine what it might be like to belong in that world. But instead, he was made to feel like he was nothing more than a nuisance. The house was quiet when he walked in, his sneakers tapping softly against the marble floor of the foyer. His dad wasn't around, as usual. His schedule was always packed with meetings, business trips, and international calls. Noah's mother was out too, tending to some charity event, leaving him alone in the large, empty house. The silence was almost suffocating. Noah slumped onto the couch in the living room, his gaze wandering across the space. The luxurious furniture, the art on the walls, the pristine floors. All reminders that he was surrounded by wealth, yet never truly part of it. He knew his father had built a fortune, but it was a world Noah had never felt comfortable in, even though it was all around him. Sighing deeply, he picked up the TV remote and flicked through the channels aimlessly. Nothing could hold his attention. His mind kept drifting back to the boutique, the beautiful clothes, the expensive perfumes, the polished staff. The idea that he could ever fit into such a world felt like a distant fantasy. What did it matter, anyway? He wasn't part of that life. Not now, and maybe not ever. Just as Noah leaned back into the couch, trying to shake off his thoughts, his phone buzzed. The sudden vibration startled him, and he quickly glanced at the screen. It was a message from his dad's assistant. "Claire, your father needs to speak with you. He's aware of what happened at the boutique." Noah's heart skipped a beat. His dad knew? How? He hadn't said anything to anyone. He had barely shared what happened with his mom, let alone anyone else. But before Noah could process his thoughts, his phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from the one person who could change everything, his father. "Hey, Dad," Noah said quietly, trying to sound normal, though his voice betrayed the uncertainty and sadness lingering inside him. "Where are you, son?" His father's voice was calm, but there was an underlying sharpness to it. It wasn't angry, but it was serious. "I just received some unsettling news about what happened today." "A boutique? What's going on?" Noah hesitated, not sure what to say. His father wasn't one for small talk or easy sympathy, but there was an unmistakable concern in his tone. I just went in to look around," Noah started, his words coming out in a jumble. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble, but they kicked me out." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Noah could almost hear his father's thoughts racing as he processed the situation. "Noah," his father finally said, his voice low and measured, "I don't care what happened there. But understand this. You will never, ever let anyone make you feel like you don't belong." Noah's stomach churned. He didn't know how to respond. He felt small, not because of what his father was saying, but because of what had happened that afternoon. He didn't belong in that boutique, and his dad's words felt almost like a hollow attempt to make him feel better. He wasn't sure it was working. "You're my son," his father continued, "and that means you are entitled to whatever this world has to offer. Don't let anyone, especially someone who doesn't know you, tell you otherwise. I'll take care of this, but I want you to understand something. This is the last time anyone will ever treat you that way." Noah bit his lip, the mix of emotions swirling inside him. He was grateful his dad was standing up for him, but at the same time, he didn't want to be the cause of a big issue. "I didn't mean to make a big deal out of it," he murmured. His father's voice softened, but only slightly. "It's not about making a big deal out of it, Noah. It's about respect, and about showing the world what you're truly capable of. I want you to stay where you are. I'm coming to see you." Before Noah could say anything else, his father hung up, leaving him in a quiet, confused daze. What did he mean by that? Was it a promise, or was he just trying to comfort him? As he sat there, Noah stared at the phone in his hand. His dad's words echoed in his mind. He would take care of it. That meant something big was coming, something that Noah couldn't even begin to imagine. But one thing was for sure, things were about to change. Underscore. The next morning, the boutique stood in stark contrast to the previous day's events. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting a warm glow over the polished floors and the carefully arranged displays of luxury goods. Inside, customers wandered through the aisles, softly chatting with the sales staff, admiring the latest collections. The air was filled with the quiet hum of luxury, the delicate rustle of silk dresses, the soft clink of hangers being moved, the steady murmur of polite conversations about high-end fashion. Behind the counters, the staff moved with practiced grace, their eyes sharp and attentive, but not too eager. It was just another day in paradise for them. But as they continued with their routine, something was different. Something was off, though they couldn't quite place it. The quiet chatter of the boutique was soon interrupted by a deep, rumbling sound that seemed to grow louder with each passing second. It was the unmistakable sound of roaring engines, the kind of noise that drew attention, even on the busiest streets. The staff paused, momentarily distracted, before glancing toward the front windows. Outside, two matte black SUVs rolled up to the curb, their engines purring to a stop with an almost otherworldly precision. The sleek vehicles gleamed in the sunlight, their tinted windows reflecting the boutique's expensive facade. It wasn't just the sound that caught their attention, it was the sight of the vehicles. It was the unmistakable presence they commanded. The cars were unmistakably expensive, their custom black exteriors and understated elegance leaving a trail of whispers in their wake. As the engines cut off, the first of the SUV's doors opened with a subtle hiss, and out stepped a young boy, Noah. But this wasn't the same timid, shy boy from yesterday. Gone was the boy in scuffed sneakers and a faded jacket. Noah stood tall, his posture confident, almost regal, his every move exuding a quiet strength. He wore a perfectly tailored designer outfit. Black trousers with a crisp white shirt and a jacket that seemed to have been stitched from pure luxury. His shoes gleamed with polish, and his hair was perfectly styled. He looked like he belonged in this world now, not as a stranger, but as someone who had always been meant for it. The boy who had been turned away from the boutique just 24 hours ago now walked in as if he owned it, his head held high, his eyes scanning the scene before him. There was no trace of the boy who had been kicked out. This Noah was different. He had shed his old skin, and in its place stood someone who was ready to take control. Behind him, a second door opened, and out stepped his father, Alexander Caldwell. The contrast between father and son was striking. While Noah radiated youthful confidence, Alexander exuded a quiet, powerful authority. His custom-made suit fit him like a glove, sharp and immaculate, the fabric shimmering slightly in the sunlight. His posture was that of a man who had conquered the world and was now holding it in his grasp. His cold, calculating eyes scanned the boutique, taking in every detail, every face, every expression. He was a man who had built an empire, and everyone who worked here, whether they knew it or not, was about to realize that they were part of it. The staff inside the boutique froze. The familiar hum of the store came to an abrupt halt, replaced by an air of uncertainty. Eyes darted to the windows, then back to the doors. The two SUVs had created an undeniable stir, one that couldn't be ignored. Whispers began to ripple through the air like a wave. Some of the employees, those who had been working at the boutique the previous day, recognized Noah immediately. They looked at each other, and their faces drained of color. Was it him? The same boy? The one they had kicked out so harshly? A sense of unease began to settle over the entire store. The once calm atmosphere was now thick with tension. The manager, the same woman who had dismissed Noah the day before, stood at the center of it all. Her hands trembled slightly as she glanced towards the entrance. The smile that had once seemed so confident now looked forced. She swallowed hard, her breath catching in her throat. She had no idea what was coming, but one thing was clear: she had made a grave mistake. Noah and his father walked into the boutique, the air thick with a strange electricity. As they passed the staff, the once bustling store fell silent. The employees watched in disbelief as the young boy, now dressed in a sharp, immaculate outfit, walked confidently past them, a quiet smile tugging at his lips. Behind him, Alexander Caldwell surveyed the scene with a steady, unwavering gaze. His eyes briefly met the manager's, and without a word, the unspoken message was clear: this wasn't just a visit. This was a reckoning. The manager straightened up, her heart racing, but she couldn't move. Her gaze locked on Noah and his father, her anxiety growing with every second. Her mind raced. How had she misjudged this? How had she allowed her arrogance to overshadow the truth? The air in the boutique seemed to grow heavier with each passing second, the weight of what was about to happen pressing down on her. As father and son made their way deeper into the boutique, the atmosphere had shifted completely. What had once been an elegant, serene shop was now a place filled with uncertainty, all because of the presence of two people who no longer needed to say anything to make their mark. The message was loud and clear. Things were about to change, and no one would dare treat Noah the same way again. Noah and his father entered the boutique, their steps purposeful and synchronized, the heavy doors swinging shut behind them with a soft chime that echoed through the store. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The soft murmur of conversations died down, and every pair of eyes in the boutique turned towards them. The camera lingered on the staff, their faces frozen in shock, their expressions a mixture of guilt and surprise. The once bustling boutique had come to a complete standstill, as if the very air had thickened with the weight of the moment. Noah stood beside his father, but this time, he was no longer the quiet, timid boy who had been humiliated just a day before. There was a quiet strength in his posture, a confidence that seemed to radiate from him. The pristine designer outfit he wore made him seem like he belonged here, but it wasn't just the clothes that changed him. It was something deeper, something powerful. Alexander Caldwell, standing tall next to his son, radiated an aura of silent authority. His sharp gaze swept over the boutique, and for a moment, everything felt suspended in time. He didn't need to raise his voice, didn't need to make a grand display. His presence alone commanded attention. The employees, still in shock, looked at one another but dared not speak. They all knew something was coming, something that could change everything. "Is the manager here?" Alexander's voice broke the silence. It was calm, controlled, yet every syllable carried an undeniable weight. One of the employees quickly motioned toward the manager, who had been watching in increasing anxiety. Her eyes were wide, her face pale, and her hands trembled as she slowly walked toward them. She had known, from the moment the two SUVs had arrived, that this moment was inevitable. But no amount of preparation could erase the nervousness creeping up her spine as she approached Noah and his father. She stopped a few feet in front of them, her mouth dry. "Why, yes, Mr. Caldwell. I'm the manager. How can I help you?" Her words came out in a rushed, faltering tone. She had seen many customers over the years, but never had she felt so small, so exposed, under the weight of Alexander's gaze. Alexander didn't waste time. "What happened yesterday?" he asked, his tone still calm, but carrying an undercurrent of steel. "Why did you feel the need to kick my son out of this store?" The manager opened her mouth, her thoughts racing for the right words, but they failed her. I didn't mean to. It was just that. He didn't look like he could afford anything here. And no," Alexander cut her off, his voice firm and steady. "Your mistake was judging him by what you saw on the outside. You didn't see him for who he really was." His eyes locked on the manager's, unblinking, as if daring her to argue. The manager's face flushed, the weight of her mistake settling heavily on her shoulders. She opened her mouth again, but no words came out. She was caught, trapped by her own assumptions, her own prejudice. The store's reputation, her pride, all of it felt trivial in comparison to the truth that was standing in front of her. She had failed in the most basic of ways, by not recognizing the value of someone beyond their appearance. Alexander didn't offer her the comfort of a gentle rebuke or even a harsh reprimand. There was no room for sympathy, no attempt to make the moment easier. Instead, he made it clear that the responsibility for this mistake was now Noah's to correct. "I'm not here to scold you," he said, his gaze never leaving hers. "But understand this, my son is now in charge of this boutique. Not you. He'll decide how this place will run from now on." The manager blinked, processing the words, but still unable to fully grasp the gravity of the situation. She had been so sure of her position, so convinced that her judgment was the final word. But now, she was being told that everything had shifted, and she wasn't in control anymore. The camera shifted to Noah. For the first time, the boy who had been dismissed so easily stood tall, his shoulders squared, his expression calm but resolute. His father's words had given him power, but it wasn't the kind of power that came from wealth or status. It was the power of someone who had learned a painful lesson, someone who now understood the importance of respect, not just for others, but for himself. Noah looked at his father, his gaze steady. "What should I do next?" he asked, his voice clear and confident. Alexander smiled, a small nod of approval in his eyes. "You're in charge now," he said simply. "You decide. This is your responsibility." The camera lingered on Noah's face as he took in his father's words, his eyes bright with understanding. It wasn't just about taking over a store. It was about understanding the weight of respect, leadership, and the responsibility to stand up for what was right. Noah turned to the manager, his voice firm but calm. "I want everything to change here, starting with how we treat people. Everyone, no matter what they look like." For the first time, the manager saw Noah, not the boy she had dismissed, but the person who was now holding the reins of this boutique. She nodded, her hands still trembling, but she knew that things had irrevocably changed. And with that, the silence that had hung in the air for so long was finally broken, replaced by a new understanding. The boutique was no longer just a store of luxury, it was a place where respect and fairness would be valued above all else. A few weeks had passed since that fateful day, and the boutique had undergone a complete transformation. The once pristine, cold elegance of the store had evolved into a welcoming space where luxury and inclusivity coexisted effortlessly. The store no longer felt like an exclusive playground for the rich and elite. Instead, it had become a place where everyone, no matter their appearance or background, was treated with the same level of respect. The shift wasn't just in the products displayed or the design of the interior, but in the very essence of the boutique itself. Noah walked through the doors of the boutique on a quiet afternoon, dressed casually in a simple t-shirt and jeans, an outfit that now felt more like him than the pristine suits he had once worn. The camera followed him as he strolled through the boutique, his movements relaxed but purposeful. His gaze was confident, not arrogant, as he observed the changes that had taken place over the past few weeks. There were no more whispers or side glances from the staff. Instead, they greeted him with smiles, their eyes reflecting genuine respect. The shelves were still stocked with high-end fashion, but the atmosphere had shifted. The store was filled with customers from all walks of life, young and old, wealthy and not so wealthy. They moved through the boutique without fear of judgment, knowing that they would be treated with dignity, regardless of what they wore or how much they could afford. The once stuffy air of exclusivity had been replaced by an inviting warmth, where style wasn't defined by price tags, but by the confidence to wear what made you feel good. Noah paused by a rack of clothes, running his fingers lightly over the fabrics. It was a subtle gesture, but it spoke volumes about how far he had come. He wasn't just a visitor in this world of luxury anymore. He was part of it, shaping it, breathing life into it in a way that mattered. The boutique had become more than a business. It was a reflection of his values, a place where people could feel comfortable and respected, no matter who they were. The staff, once wary and unsure of Noah's role in the boutique, now treated him with deference. They no longer saw him as the boy who had been humiliated, but as someone who had earned their respect, not through wealth or status, but through the way he treated others. They had learned from him, from his father, and from the simple yet powerful lessons he had instilled in them. As Noah continued to walk through the boutique, he was joined by his father, Alexander, who entered the store with his usual air of quiet authority. He stood beside Noah for a moment, watching the flow of customers, before offering his son a quiet compliment. "You've done well," Alexander said, his voice calm, but the pride in his eyes was unmistakable. Noah glanced at his father, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. The change in the boutique was evident, but there was something else in the air, a sense of satisfaction that came not from success or profit, but from knowing that he had made a difference. His father, ever the businessman, looked at Noah with an intensity that only he could convey. "How does it feel?" he asked, his gaze searching, as though trying to gauge his son's thoughts. "This responsibility, this change you've brought?" Noah's response was simple, but it carried a depth of wisdom that only someone who had been through such an experience could understand. "It's not about the money," he said, his voice steady and firm. "It's about showing kindness." Alexander nodded, the words settling between them like a silent agreement. He had always known his son had a strength within him, but it was in this moment, in this realization, that he saw a side of Noah that he could truly respect. It wasn't about the wealth they had or the status they carried. It was about what they did with it, how they used it to create something meaningful. The camera pulled back slowly, capturing the entire boutique in one sweeping shot. The once cold, distant walls now felt like a living, breathing space, a space of inclusivity, respect, and grace. And at the center of it all stood Noah, no longer the shy boy who had been turned away, but someone who had learned to lead with humility and strength. As the shot lingered on Noah's face, the camera caught the quiet confidence in his eyes, the subtle smile that spoke volumes. He knew now, with certainty, what truly mattered. It wasn't the wealth or the luxury surrounding him. It was the way he had changed the world around him, one act of kindness at a time. And in that moment, standing tall in the middle of the boutique, Noah knew that he had found something far more valuable than anything money could buy: the power to make people feel seen, respected, and valued. The final shot lingered on his face, the camera pulling away slowly, leaving viewers with a sense of hope. Hope that kindness could change the world, no matter where you came from or what you had. If you enjoyed the story, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this one. Also, let us know where you are watching from in the comments section. And also rate this story on a scale of 1 to 10. Did you resonate? Let us know. Stay tuned for more stories like this.